Well, hey, we are super excited to be having this conversation on artificial intelligence or AI. My name is Steve Harper. I am the founder of Ripple Central and a whole host of other things. With me today are two of my really good friends and the real stars of today's show, Roy Gatling and Jen Lehner. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Great,
Glad to
Steve.
be here.
All
Yeah, happy
right.
to be
Well,
here.
hey, Jen, why don't you just give us a quick rundown of your, just make a, just kind of an overview of what you're doing today, where you focus, and then we'll kick it over to Roy just to give a little background for everybody who will watch this.
Yeah, sure. So I am an AI consultant, and I also create online courses that are all about AI. And these days, I just try to help business owners leverage the power of AI so they can grow.
Love it. And you were just on my podcast, and people love that episode.
Oh,
So
well, thank you.
yeah, it's still trending super high, which we appreciate. Roy, what about you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks again for letting me be here and for introducing me to Jen. We had a great conversation a while back, and it was a real pleasure. So great to be on with you as well. Longtime tech guy, been in it since essentially the advent of the PC, and really got into the AI space in 2022. I mean, I played around with it many years ago. I mean, I tried my hand at Lisp programming, and Lisp was a language that sort of tied into AI and such. And anyway, it was an idea ahead of its time, really. And so, but I have been in it really heavy, day in, day out since 2022, involved in application development, and that's primarily where I focus is that arena. So I can take ideas and try to bring them to life. And with the use of AI and using AI within the application itself to provide faster, better results to the user.
Yeah, awesome. Lisp technology was, I think there was a marketing miss there. They could have got Mike Tyson as their spokesperson. Might have taken hold. You never know, right?
Yeah,
Love that.
they missed it, but yeah.
Well, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation is there is so much talk about AI right now. There's a lot of people that are trying to understand what it means, how they utilize it, how they apply it in their day to day lives or their work. And specifically, I think there's also a lot of concerns about where that technology is going. And, Roy, you and I have talked a lot about this.
Mhm.
People worried about, it replacing their jobs and all of the, the things that, may create redundancy in terms of certain roles and responsibilities. But I thought one of the places that I think was a great place to start is where do you think entrepreneurs and business leaders are missing the boat when it comes to AI? Let me start with Jen and then I'll come to you, Roy.
I think the bigger thing is that people are putting it on hold, right? Like people are putting it on hold and they're saying, let's I'll get to this later when I have time,
Yep.
right? And but it's here and it's beyond here. Which, can I share this quote with you before I forget? Because I
Yeah,
made a
absolutely.
note of this. So when I first read it, it was a little bit jarring, and I think it's a little bit rough, but you'll see what I mean. Let me just read this to
Okay.
you. Swap AI, like the term AI, with internet in your company's positioning and listen to how stupid it sounds. Quote, we're an internet powered company that leverages connectivity to drive innovation. Cringe. That's exactly how most companies' AI enabled marketing and positioning sounds to customers who use AI everywhere without thinking about it. Simply using AI isn't a competitive advantage like it was in 2023. It's the bare minimum, the basics, the essentials. More than 90% of Fortune 500 companies already run on AI tools, and companies are still bragging about leveraging AI like it's something special. The old successful path to digital transformation is a farce. Throw out the year-long AI pilots. Scratch the long and laborious committees and meetings about those committee meetings. AI moves at breakneck speed, which is why it's time for some brutal honesty about why your company's AI strategy is likely embarrassing.
Ooh. I love that. Where's that quote from?
That is Jordan Wilson. He is the host of Everyday AI. I highly recommend it. I don't
Okay.
know how he does it, but he every day, Monday through Friday, he does a live stream on LinkedIn, and he has a great newsletter. Um, and of course, that was also a lead in to a pitch for his help, right? Like his
Yeah.
consultancy. But, and it's a little harsh, right? Because the fact of the matter is, especially small business solopreneurs, the fact is they are just now adopting and
Yeah.
they are just now starting to implement. Um, but I think that it, it's, it is important. It does make the point of like, it is so important that you've got to have a plan right now.
Yeah. Well, it makes me concerned. Jordan got that off my other company's website, so I need to go check it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. But at the end of the day, it is kind of funny because I have seen other companies that are, that really do that. Like, I mean, that is like how they think they're expressing, what they're bringing to the market or how they're representing their products or services. And that quote and his explanation or expansion beyond it is really, really powerful. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Roy, what are your impressions of that?
Well, a couple of things now, and I'll kind of piggyback on part of what Jen said, which is I'll come at you with a quote, and then I get into some examples. So, a guy named William Gibson, he was a fiction writer, kind of credited with the whole cyberpunk thing, but he said the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, and it's definitely
Ooh.
unevenly distributed in tech. There's been the development of the AI piece, and then the usage of the AI, and it has had a significant impact on the tech industry. With regard to jobs, that has impacted jobs significantly, and so the it's interesting that the essentially the sector that has essentially originated it, generated it, is being impacted the most right now. And it's primarily affecting, I think, white collar jobs, certainly much more than blue collar. And that's this whole uneven distribution thing that I was really talking about. Now, I'll give you an example. And this was just the other day, I read about this. Walmart. So, Walmart was involved in a lot of pilots for the implementation of agents, and they have now moved out of the pilot stage,
Hmm.
and so they are implementing four main agents, if you will. And the first one's for customer facing usage, right? So if you got a question about your product, you're looking for something there, or the shipping date or what have you, it'll use that. They've got one that's essentially directed at their suppliers and sellers, looking at basically catalog management, analytics, stuff like that. And then they've got one for their internal associates, the people that work for them, right? How can they better understand processes and things of that nature? And then lastly, their developers, the actual internal team there that's doing all the work. I spent a lot of time at Dell, and Walmart was and still is a huge Dell customer. I mean, they are big in tech.
Yeah.
And from a retail perspective, they're about twice the size as Amazon. I don't know if people realize that. Of course, they got all the brick and mortar, but they do a lot of stuff online. But anyway, that's just an example of how it is being implemented. But to Jen's point, small businesses not so much. Certainly some industries not so much. I'm you and I separately kind of look
Yeah.
at the construction business, and
Yeah.
that's it's there a little, but compared to consultants and financial analysts and businesses like that, they're barely scratching the surface right now.
Yeah. Well, I love that quote as well. And I didn't come with a quote, so I'm going to make one up on the spot just so I have one and feel like I contributed. It makes dumb guys like me look smart. That's how I view AI. So if
I love
we
it.
if we approach it through those lenses, I think when I talk to a lot of business owners and a lot of, executive leadership, the buzz is out there. But a lot of folks they're sitting on the sidelines, they're afraid to actually dip their toe in the water, and it can be overly intimidating and scary. Roy and I did a session for my software company a couple of days ago, and just looking at all of the core um, platforms, right? You know, one's 3.0 or 3.9 or 4.7 and all these different variations. For someone that's just kind of a regular Joe like me, and if I was thinking about if I was coming at this completely with a fresh set of eyes, how do I get started? It can be like overwhelming, right? You hear all these different platforms, you hear all these different solutions that are out there. And what was brand new yesterday is already old today and it's going to be replaced tomorrow. How do you both think or view this as it's a necessary situation for an executive or leader or entrepreneur to get involved now and get engaged, but those that have been sitting on the sidelines that are a little worried about it or don't know where to start, how do they get going? And Roy, I'll start with you and then I'll come back to Jen.
Yeah, it's a good question. How do you get going? Well, I think the easiest way is to it's probably to engage with someone like Jen, right? Basically, go off and get a little help here, at least up front, because you can just dive in if you want. That's okay. But here's what I tend to see a lot of times is people go, I used it and it didn't work for me. Okay, what did you do? Well, I spent about 3 minutes, asking it for something stupid that, and not in the most intelligent way either. And, I just didn't like what I got back. And so I don't think it works for me.
Wait, that was our conversation just a couple of days ago. I think you were talking about me when you.
So, it's just like, that's not much of a plan. It's not much of a test. And so I think you've got to really think about why are you interested in using it? Besides, it's just, the buzz of the day, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's definitely, there's a lot of hype around it, but there's also a lot of reality to it. I mean, again, it's my thing, but I love it. It's not perfect, but I know a lot of humans that aren't perfect either. So, so anyway, I think you got to try to come at it from a perspective of what am I looking to do, right? And how can I get a little help, a little direction on this from someone that already has been through that or knows something about it, and help guide me a bit. And then from there, maybe I go and try some things. These pilots come up, right? Large companies, but smaller companies as well. But I think you got to start from a place of, why, right? What's the purpose? Not it can't be just because I need to be able to say AI. I mean, that doesn't really do it. You're looking for ROI,
Yeah.
and a value. So I'll pause there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Jim, what do you think?
100% what Roy said. And so when I work with someone, the very first thing that we want to do is, or anybody, I mean, I think the very first way you want to get some ROI from AI is to look at the automated stuff, the repetitive stuff that can be automated, right? Like that's kind of the low hanging fruit.
Yep.
So that's kind of easy to identify, right? When you think about it, is like, you're like, oh, I really, I'll give you a good example of this in just a second. But, all the stuff, we all know the stuff that we just can't stand doing, right? Like, let's start with that.
Yep.
And I'll give you another quote. This one is my quote. It's not an original idea, but I worded it like this, which is, when AI handles the mechanical, humans handle the meaningful.
Ooh.
So we're not, I never go in thinking, all right, you're going to get ready to, you're going to reduce your staff by 5, because we're going to come in and we're just going to make you lean and mean. No, it's like, we're going to free up those talented subject matter experts within your business to do more of the stuff they do great at. And let's let all this mechanical stuff get handled by the AI. So, example I was going to give you, this just happened last week. There's a CEO of a company that I was working with, and she handles all the scheduling, and she's got all these different project coordinators and project managers and all these different events happening all across the world. And the one thing she does in her business, that is like, she has this dashboard and she keeps an eye of who is where, and she pretty much does it from a spreadsheet. But when she sits down with her team, it takes them 3 to 4 hours on the whiteboard to figure out, because her team also puts in their preferences for what kind of work they want to be doing at any given time, right? or where they want to be traveling. And they like to take that into consideration. And then, of course, everybody has their different skills that they bring to different events, and they don't keep the same hats on all the time. So a project manager could be a project manager on one event, but then they could be another role on another event. So there's all these moving parts. So they spend 3 hours or more on the whiteboard, then another 2 or 3 hours slotting all that into spreadsheets. I took a picture of their whiteboard. I uploaded the PDF of the spreadsheet, and then we had profiles, rudimentary at this point, but profiles of each staff member and sort of all of their specs, what their preferences were, the dates they were already committed to stuff. And in about 2 minutes, they saved 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
Just like we created, for this particular case, we created a custom gem, which is, they like to use Google products, but it's the same thing as like a custom GPT. You just give it some instructions, but you could start with the most simple thing, like the most simple little thing. And then it starts to get better and better. And so having someone come in to help you is going to save you a lot of wasted time, but I'm all about the tinkering. Like, I think it's good for people to go in and tinker around with it and just start playing with it. But like Roy said, don't just say, oh, this is stupid. It's not any good. I mean, it doesn't apply to my business.
Yeah.
Because it does. You just have to keep working with it. And here's one other thing I want to say to that is that you'll have the most success with your AI if you really treat it like a human being, like a human staff member.
Yep.
And you would never go to a human staff member and dump a 400-page book on their head and be like, all right,
give me the summary. Yeah.
Give me, or just, give me a summary or prioritize, right? Like, you find the priorities in there for me. And so if you were to sit down with that employee and spend a lot of time in bringing them up to speed on your company and like what your expectations are, and more importantly, very specifically what your existing processes look like and what your objectives are, like, it's the same thing. It's just the same thing. So start thinking about your AI as an actual human being sitting in your office and what you would need to do to get them up to speed. There's a little more front loading and a little more work in that scenario, but then pretty much once it's done, you're going to want to, obviously, you have to update these prompts and the knowledge bases and all that. But once you get it going, and then you continue to iterate and like refine it, and that's when you're like cooking.
Yeah.
That's when things get really good.
Well, it's kind of like, it reminds me of that quote, to, go slow to go fast, right? It may take a little heavy lifting on the front end, but the juice is definitely worth the squeeze if you invest that time. Kind of made me think while you were both talking about, how do you dig a swimming pool? If you think about the history of, tools, right? We started with sticks, and then somebody figured out if you like put a flat end to that stick, you can move more dirt. Eventually that led to a shovel. And then ultimately, that leads to a backhoe, right? And be able to move massive amounts of dirt in a very short period of time. To dig your swimming pool using just a shovel could take you weeks or months, just, of really heavy, hard labor. AI is really taking that bulldozer approach, or that, that front loader, to be able to remove big, massive blockers, challenges, and all of the elements. And I think when people get fearful of the technology, if you start to look at just the history of things, like I remember when the iPhone came out, it's like, who the heck needs that? But everybody had to have one, right? And now where they are, and they're an essential part of our day-to-day lives. Mm-hmm. This is just another technology, I think, that has massive consequences on a much, much larger scale than we're even giving credit for. But at the end of the day, the takeaway, I think, for our audience is you got to start somewhere, and it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be huge, but you do have to start, taking some small bites of the opportunity. And the more you do, the more comfortable you become. The more wide ranging your imagination allows you to go. Mm-hmm. And I think, Roy, to your point, people, and this came up the other day when we were doing our webinar, right? People are still looking at the AI tool as just Google on, or any search
Mhm.
engine on,
Right.
steroids. And that's not what we're talking about, right?
Not at all. I mean, it's being used a lot for search, but no, I've said it. Jen just said it. It's like to me, it's your assistant, and it's an assistant that when you first get introduced, they don't know anything about you, your
Yes.
business, your project, your what have you, and so you need to fill them in, to provide the context.
Yep.
It's the word that gets thrown around a lot. And just briefly, I mean, many years ago, I took a class that uh, it was a Ken Blanchard class, from this was back in the day, but it's called situational leadership. But the whole point of that
Yep.
was, look, if I've got somebody that I'm working with that has never worked with me or done this job before, I need to provide some very detailed and clear instructions. I can't just say, hey, go fix this and see you later. Now, if I've worked with that person for 5 years and they've done the job many times, I can do that.
Yeah.
It's the same way with this. Is that there's no difference. So back to the point about think of it as a person and you're working with that way, you got to provide them that context. And over time, that's needed less and less.
I like that. And Jen, back to your, when you were talking about that client that you're working with, if you just think of, if like you have an entrepreneur or business leader that's watching this, and they're like, well, I still don't get the ROI, right? Why would I invest the time? Well, you just illustrated it perfectly, right? If you had 5 people in that meeting or 10 people in that meeting, that's 30 hours of time,
Yep.
multiplied by the average salary, right? Whatever that breaks down to the hourly. And you could pretty quickly figure out what your costs are just to do something in a very antiquated, old school way that you've essentially replaced in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, by helping them lean into and embrace that technology and get significant value out of that return on investment.
Absolutely. Time is money, honey.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So let me ask you both, and Jen, I'll start with you on this. So I'm an executive or entrepreneur. I've been hearing about it. I know I need to do it. Where are some of the ones that, or what are some of the platforms that you recommend to start dipping my toe in to get familiar with, start testing these things out a little bit?
I mean, sort of the go-to for everybody is because it's just the one everybody knows is ChatGPT,
Yep.
and it is quite good. So I would say ChatGPT, but don't sleep on Gemini, especially for everybody who's already paying for like Google Workspace.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You already have that gives you an upgrade on Gemini, and it's just phenomenal. So I mean, really you could pick any of these large language models, but I would say Gemini, ChatGPT, or Claude.
Okay.
Um, and actually all three. Just get the free account to start with, and just start messing around with them. Go to YouTube and type into YouTube like, where do I start with AI? And make sure you pick a recent video that has like a lot of reviews, positive reviews. I mean, just something as simple as that. I would say, in a current project that I'm working on right now, if you're a CEO of a company with, you know, let's say 20 to 100 employees, and you're trying to sort of AIify your whole company all at once. What we're doing is we're bringing the whole team because everybody is at different levels. Some people in the company are very advanced, and some people are just really terrified, and they've done nothing. They haven't even downloaded ChatGPT. So we're dealing with, and that's going to be true for a lot of companies right now. So what we're doing is we're saying to ourselves, what is something that everybody uses, that once they learn this thing, they're going to feel really confident, and they're going to say, oh great. So they're not afraid anymore. They've gotten some confidence, and now they're like, what's next? So you're going to get buy-in, right? If we go in this way. And so what we're doing is everybody uses Zoom, right? And there is an AI program that connects with Zoom called Fathom. Are y'all familiar with
Yep.
Fathom?
Yep. Note
Mm-hmm.
taking. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
It's just dreamy. It's just fantastic, right? And so Fathom connects to your Zoom, and then you can set it up so that the minute that your Zoom is over, everybody who was on the call gets an email with the replay, but also it summarizes like the action items, who said they were going to do what, and you can click on each of them and it's going to take you directly to that point in the meeting. You could connect it to your Slack. So, and there's a million other things you can do with it, but that is hugely helpful to anybody working with a team, because I don't even need to write. It's just obviously very, very helpful and time saving. And so I would say same thing for a CEO or an executive that's working with a lot of other people. Start with something that everybody can benefit with and is not too complicated, like right away, but for the individual, yeah, just go and do them all. Just go in and do them all.
I love
Mess
it.
with
Roy,
all.
what about you? What do you suggest?
Yeah, well, I would agree. I mean, ChatGPT has got people's attention. I think it's kind of the starting point for many people. I use it. I mean, I love Claude. My use case is a little bit different, I think, than some people, but and Gemini. I mean, I use that too. Again, because I've got Google Workspace. And Gemini 2.5 Pro is fantastic for a lot of things. So they're all good. There are a ton of models. I mean, I showed some the other day that people never even heard of. And but all three of those, any one of them or all three, great choices. And I agree that there's some low hanging fruit within virtually every business. The meeting summary, the action items. That's one that everybody I think can use. Creating a meeting agenda, or just even writing an email or a status report, things like that. Some people are better at that kind of thing than others, and those are relatively simple things to do.
Here's one of my favorite ones. Did we talk about this? Did I cut you off, Roy? First of all,
No,
sorry
no,
about
it's okay. Go ahead.
And Steve, did we talk about this last time, Notebook LM?
We did. We touched on it a little bit, but yeah, share a little bit about that.
So Notebook LM is owned by Google, and it's free and it's fantastic. But again, if you're already on Google Workspace, you get the bigger version. But what makes it unique is that you can upload the context window is so much bigger. So you can upload massive files and also more diverse kinds of content than any other platform. An MP3 without having to get it transcribed first.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just sort of every sort of, really everything, I think, except a PNG. But whatever, you could turn the PNG into a PDF easy enough and stick it in there, or a JPEG. But this is the coolest thing. So you can create a audio review of the content that you put in there. So for example, let's suppose you're trying to up-level your negotiating skills. Okay. So you find a book or material that's out there from the greatest minds that talk about negotiating, right? You put those books, the PDFs, the videos from YouTube, whatever you want, as a source in your notebook. Then you click on audio overview and you give it instructions, and you can say, and then you also put in the transcript of your last Zoom call where you had to negotiate something. And then you say, through the eyes of this expert, please give me brutally honest feedback on my last call. How'd I do? Like, break it down for me. Now, you could get that in text, right? You could put that in ChatGPT and do the same thing, although you'd be limited by the context window, number one. But here's the thing about the audio overview is these two people, they're not really people, AI, but it sounds so human. You would never be able to tell the difference, a man and a woman. And they have a discussion based on what you told them to talk about. And it gives a natural narrative and story arc. And it's also just great to listen to. You create your own custom podcast and they actually really give good feedback. They're not just pulling out sentences that you say. They synthesize it and give opinions based on the expert, as if they were the expert.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from that angle, you could literally, you have the knowledge of the universe, everything in the universe at your fingertips. So you could do that with any kind of specialist to get any kind of feedback on anything you want feedback on. Then you can listen to it when you go for a walk. My favorite thing is to listen to this. I put very dense materials in there that I am never going to read all 800 pages about whatever. And I'll put in a bunch of stuff, usually about AI and like what's happening, so I could stay up to speed. And then I get in the bathtub and I listen to the podcast, and I'm like, while I'm in the bathtub, and I can just sort of like learn it better. But yesterday or the day before, they added to this feature. So now they do the same thing, but with a video summary. And I've been waiting for this for a long time because I knew they were going to do it. And I was really worried that it was going to be a creepy, like humanoid
Yeah.
kind of, like avatar kind of thing. But what they did, it was so smart, really appealing voiceovers. And it's more like an animated slide deck. And they're really good.
Yeah.
You just gotta try it out. So if you really want to blow your own mind, do go to Notebook LM and play around with that stuff. I also love it as a way to just have it as a, what do you call it? A vessel, a repository to keep things organized. It's marvelous.
Well, I'll tack on to that. Kevin Rose, I don't know if either of you know that name, but he was the founder of Dig Nation. He's been a tech startup guy for a long time. He's an investor. He's got the Kevin Rose podcast show. And one of the things that he talked about a few months back was utilizing that exact tool. And what he was doing was he interviews some really interesting entrepreneurs doing some really cool things, but he took like the total edited video and podcast episode, and he sent it to Notebook LM and said, now create 3 additional episodes from what you heard from me and the guest, but do it through that lens where you have these 2 independent people, a man, woman, talking about it, and extending that out as, hey, this is user feedback, or this was input that we got from the audience. And he threw a couple of other things in there. But at the end of the day, the platform actually gave him 3 completed we'll call them, or kind of condensed version episodes that he could then put out there. In fact, he highlighted one, and it was so well done. You would never in a million years would have thought that was coming from 2 talking heads, right? 2 robots, so to speak.
Right.
It was so quality. And what was funny was that from what that AI tool did, it actually gave him 3 or 4 additional ideas on how to go back to his original guest. But instead of having one episode that went out and you hope people watched it, now he ended up having 3 or 4 or 5 different episodes from one event. But the content web that he created out of that, both for social posts, blogs, additional content for his newsletter, all of that got delivered to his inbox without him lifting a finger. And it was that totally sold me on that fact, because not only did it create an additional voice to his and his guests, but it actually got his community even more engaged because they felt like they were part of an additional conversation about the original subject matter. And so, like you said, there's multiple ways to look at it and to play with it. But, once you start going down the rabbit hole, it's pretty amazing how quickly you can start to see how the tools themselves can actually extend the reach of your content well beyond what you probably imagine.
Yeah, I love that example. Another thing that I did with it was I put in my website, and then I put in Donald Miller's Story Brand book, which is all about messaging on your website. And then I said, I want you to review my website as if you were a Story Brand consultant, or as if you were Donald Miller. And I mean, I can't imagine that a real Donald Miller consultant could have done as good a job as they did. Like, it's so thorough, and it really helped me see things that I wouldn't have seen before. It's a remarkable tool.
Yeah, Roy's been working with me in my construction project management platform to incorporate AI through his tool, Snapz.ai. And one of the things that we've started talking about is how do you take some of these things that an individual might experience and leverage AI to help them actually get better at their job. Roy, I know you created a site called Coachable, which is kind of taking subject matter experts, applying this, I'll call it hard copy content, because remember, I'm the dumb guy. So I take everything down to the most basic level, but putting up that content and that information, I know you're utilizing some of my stuff to like help people get better at networking or connecting, right? Interpersonal relationships. But there's this whole plethora of coaching different elements, whether you want to be a better marketer, you want to be a better salesperson. But these tools actually become the resource by which the employee can actually either accelerate their learning curve if they're new into a role, or get
Yes.
better at what they're doing. And I think really at the end of the day, the differentiator for a lot of people is, how do you leverage that technology to make you better at what you do day to day? Maybe you just talk a little bit about what you've done there, Roy, and why,
Sure.
and the application that you see in terms of how it applies across industry.
Sure. Well, yeah, on the this coachable site that you referenced, I mean, there's sales. Jen mentioned negotiation; that's there as well, and networking, brainstorming, even learning a language, right? Because these things are capable of
So
essentially
much.
multiple
Yeah.
languages out there. But yeah, we do take content that's available from experts and use that as essentially the reference for this, and it's all voice. It's you speak to it, it speaks back to you, and it'll ask qualifying questions, clarifying questions, excuse me, and take you through a conversation. The other thing that we've talked about, is with regard to construction project managers. Maybe there's a junior person, or it could be anything really. Someone that's working in finance, doesn't matter. But bottom line, let's just say I'm a junior, what have you, or whatever, and I'm not so sure how to do something or how I should approach a particular issue or opportunity, and I don't necessarily want to go ask my boss or one of my coworkers because I don't want to look dumb.
Yeah.
Right? Can I go and just ask this thing? And you don't have to necessarily use a voice language model all the time, right? But that interface is fairly natural. But you can just type in the question into Chat GPT or something like that. But essentially, you can get some direction, some help, and kind of begin to go down a process of better understanding how you might approach a particular issue or opportunity, what have you. So I think those uses are really pretty interesting and clearly helpful to a lot of people. Even I mean, there's things that sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm not so sure. I think this is how I would do it, but have a look and give me some feedback. And even with business ideas, the one thing I think is really important is to ask these tools to give you critical feedback.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll say, "Oh, yeah, this is a great idea." Well, yeah, maybe not. If you throw in the critical feedback piece, just those two words, you'll be surprised at what it comes back with.
Yes.
I
I
love that.
love all of that. Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, and I actually had this conversation just this past week with someone about the fact that they're in a senior leader role, and we were talking about the challenges. You guys know me obviously as the Ripple guy, and I talk about communication and relationship building, and how a lot of organizations don't train us how to act and respond and connect and engage when we come into a new role, especially if you're a junior, right? But I was asking the senior leader, I said, how often in a week's time, a month's time, a quarter's time, does somebody come to you and say, how can you help me be better? Or what do I need to do better in
Mm-hmm.
my role or my job? How do I become a bigger contributor? And of course, I just got the blank stare like, well, nobody does that, right? At the end of the day. And I said, don't you think that's a problem? Like, that people aren't continually looking at how to refine the process. And he's like, well, yeah, I definitely think that's a problem, but I think there's an intimidation factor.
Right.
And I said, so what these tools can do for you is actually take away the awkwardness from the employee's perspective, to be able to ask a good information subject matter expert, the orb in the sky, the ability to help them navigate a problem or overcome a challenge or how to get better at whatever their role might be. And if you embrace this technology, it can do the work of the small shovel, but it's more like the bulldozer, right? It's the ability to do a lot for that person who won't bring that question to the table because they think it's too dumb, or I should know this, or I don't want to appear like I'm, was the wrong hire. There's all these things that go through the stories of employees that they're afraid to embrace the opportunity to get better because technically the companies don't make it easy. So this becomes an avenue and a resource in a big, big way, depending on what platform you use, to really help you front load, a lot of the corporate information, culture information,
Mm-hmm.
your leadership philosophy and strategy, and put it in the hands of the people who may ask questions much differently than they might if they get called in to talk to the CEO for their 15 minutes once a year, right? So I just you could see the light bulb going off like, yeah, this does make a lot of sense. And it's like, if they're not asking you, who are they asking? And he kind of goes down his leadership team and he's like, I don't think anybody's asking anybody. And so you mean that you guys are operating at the highest level of efficiency and everybody is just a rock star from day one? Clearly that's never the case, right? But they don't know how to interact. This is almost a soft pedal way to get some of your philosophy and leadership style into an engine that makes it less intimidating for people to tap.
Very empowering to the associate.
Yep, very much so. Well, let me ask you this last question, because I know we want to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but leaders that are out there, okay, we've got their interest, they are intrigued, they're definitely going to test out some of these tools. Inevitably, somebody always asks, well, wait a second, what about privacy? How do I make sure I'm not letting out my secret sauce to my competitor? Or how do I make sure that my colleague that I'm competing for the next promotion with doesn't somehow figure out that I'm putting this thing into the robots or out there into these special tools, and they're figuring out that, maybe I don't have as much experience or as much knowledge as they might. And how can I avoid feeling like I potentially am letting out maybe very secretive information or maybe confidential information? What do you guys recommend there as a company is starting to embrace this, as to what they do to kind of lock that down and make sure it's not just being shared out there for everybody's use? Jen, let me start with you.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. And I'll start by saying I am not a data and privacy expert by any means, but this comes up a lot, as you might imagine, as I work with clients. And specifically this big client that I'm with right now, they have purchased Google Enterprise, and the more you pay, the more security you have. I will just say that. So on the free ChatGPT, on the free Google, all of those will train the models. So your stuff is going up there.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And so if you read their terms of service, it says that they do not train the model if you're paying them, even at the $20 a month level. Do I believe that? I don't. It's just. It's not like I think it even comes from a nefarious place, right? I just think, I don't know how much we can lock all this down.
Sure.
I really don't. Especially when it comes to IP stuff. It's just, these are these mega content monoliths that are just these giant, there's just so much content and it's all pulling from everywhere. So I don't know what to tell you other than the best advice I have is, like, if it is super duper, well, first of all, if you're using someone else's stuff, like you're working with a client, there has to be a discussion, right? Like about what's being put where.
Yeah.
And if it's for your own stuff, you can feel good. You can feel as good as you can with the paid versions. And then there was one other thing I wanted to say, and it just slipped right out of my mind. I'll think of it as Roy starts talking.
Okay. Roy, what about you?
Sure. Well, I think there's first of all, I agree that if you're using ChatGPT or any one of these, you should assume that those companies and those models are going to use your data. That's my rule of thumb, no matter what they say.
I agree.
So that's that. Now, so that's just anything that you put out there. So if it's really proprietary information, then you got to really think about what you want to do there. People still do it, but you got to really, you got to make a conscious decision with regard to that. Now, if you're talking about, is my data going to be available to my competitors and such? Well, it's possible if it went out there, publicly into these models, these companies, and they're using it for training. But what you tend to see is companies will implement this stuff and have internal systems. Essentially, there's a little bit of a fence, a guard there regarding that. But still, you're using these models, and it really depends on how you implement it. There are some, there are several open source models that are actually quite good, and some people are using those. Some companies, I should say, are using those internally. People use them too, but individuals. But we're really talking about, I think, a company or a corporate structure. And so you could use these open source models and essentially keep all your data within your house, if you will. and really restrict the amount of leaks that could occur. But again, just using it day to day, you need to assume that it's going to get used somehow.
Is that, do you think, in your opinion, is that true even if you engage someone like yourself or Jen to build or leverage some of these LLM tools that are out there, whatever platform ends up making the most sense for your company, but creating the environment to secure your data as much as you possibly can? Because to me, I feel like there's like three levels to this, right? There's the free stuff, and whatever you're putting into the free stuff is open, season for anybody. Then there's the things that are kind of maybe the paid version, but it's kind of like you're paying not a lot, and therefore you kind of probably not getting a lot in terms of security and safety. And then there's, hey, let's custom build something specific to our operation. It's becoming our secret sauce in terms of how we perform or what we do to, be able to mine this data to be better and more efficient at, product creation or development of an idea or just employee enhancement. The chances of that data on that third level being, more susceptible to being exposed, it seems, based at least on our conversations, a little bit less likely. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
foolproof 100% probably, and that's probably why you have to do the disclaimer. But at the end of the day, you're certainly said, if security and sanctity of the information is an important consideration for your organization, then it might be worth exploring a conversation with some experts like y'all.
Yeah, I mean, when I develop an application, I mean, they're almost always multi-tenant, multi-user applications. And so there's got to be segregation of that data.
Yep.
And that's the way they're structured. And that's a common thing in the software as a service world, has been for many years. But again, then when you get into the models, within which models are you using and where are they hosted and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Jen, go ahead.
I don't really have much more to add. I mean, you guys are way more technical and brainy than I am. I'm really not that technical. So, I mean, it's something that comes up all the time. And you said it, you said the three levels, I think perfectly, Steve, and that's how I understand it as well. And that if you have your own LLM that your company owns, obviously it's going to be the safest of the three options, but, yeah, I mean, I try to stay current on what's out there and advise as best I can. But like the biggest thing that I do is I just get out in front of it to let people know, like, look, I take every precaution that I possibly can, but I cannot guarantee you that like this stuff is not going to get seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great place for us to wrap this up. I've loved this conversation. I think we should have another one and maybe even go even a little bit deeper if you guys are open to it. But
Yeah.
I think
I'd love
this is
to.
so beneficial on a big, level for a lot of people. It's not going away. And I think the key takeaway here is, even if you've been a little bit reticent to try it, start. I can tell
Yeah.
you from my own perspective, and then mainly thanks to, knowing smart people like Roy and Jen, I've dipped more than my pinky toe in it. And I've seen the benefits, the return on investment, both for, taking the swing at the ball and just, seeing what I can, come up with, how it's applied or would work in my business has been significant. So the value is definitely there. Now it's a matter of, how do you create sustainable value? How do you actually turn that value into something profitable in terms of giving back, in terms of productivity, or taking a lot of those mundane tasks off your plate? The world is really ripe for you to almost go any direction you want to go to automate and make these smart assistants really, really work well for you. But before we close out, I just want to make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of you. Roy, what's the best way for someone to learn about Snapz.ai and what you're working on?
Sure. Well, you could go to snapz.ai.com, or actually, sorry, just Snapz.ai.
Yeah.
Snapz.ai.com will actually take you to the application itself. But Snapz.ai is a website. You can reach out to roy.gatling at Snapz.ai and I'll get the email. But happy to engage with anybody on this topic anytime.
Love it. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
Front Row AI Club. That's my membership,
I love
where it's, we talk all things AI all the time. Also my main website is jenlehner.com. So JenLehner.com. Or we can connect on LinkedIn
Yep.
at Jen Lehner. I think is what it is. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you both for the time today. I really, really appreciate it. This was I knew this was going to be a fascinating discussion. Now it just kicks off all sorts of ideas to maybe do for the next one. But I really want to thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Really.
Steve.
This was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And we'll be back with another episode of this very interesting panel very soon. So thanks for watching.